The San Francisco 49ers had a cakewalk of a schedule in 2025. What does the schedule look like going into this season? And are we nearing the end of the Christian McCaffrey era? On today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker. Thanks everybody for tuning in and making this your first listen of the day. We are talking 49ers strength of schedule, what this looks like for 2026, who the opponents are. And at some point this offseason, we'll have a big schedule release show that happens and is always big news around the NFL in the slow point of the offseason. And apparently the Seattle Seahawks thought the Niners were going to take a running back even earlier than pick 90 in the 2026 NFL draft. Croc, let's start with strengths of schedule. And Warren Sharp always does great work and puts out an extensive strength of schedule article every single year and then dives back into interesting stuff once the actual schedules are released. The 49ers had one of the easiest schedules in the league last year. The Niners, once again, this year have an easier schedule, top third, but not at the very top like they were last year. Eighth easiest schedule in the NFL this year for the San Francisco 49ers, who, as we all know, aren't playing a first place schedule because they did not finish in first place in their division last year. Still a very similar win total number to last year, though, too, Croc. According to Las Vegas and the FanDuel Sportsbooks, 10.5 is the over-under win total for the San Francisco 49ers. So, first of all, let's talk strength of schedule. What did you see last year from the 49ers schedule? Was it as easy as it was supposed to be for the Niners? And what do you think about this year's strength of schedule?
Well, I think first of all, when you look at the schedule, especially heading into the season, right? I'll speak for myself. I was expecting the 49ers for the 49ers offense, to have to carry the defense. It was a young defense. A lot of guys who were going to be starters. And we're talking about young guys, rookies. How many rookies were we projecting at that time? It was like Alfred Collins, CJ West, Upton Stout, at some point Siegel. And there were, Malik Mustafa was a second-year guy, but we knew he was going to miss half the season. So you're like, hey, we're banking on Fred Warner, and we are banking on Nick Bosa to kind of just keep us afloat. And the crazy thing is, I think early on in the season, how they played against the Seahawks, stuff early on, felt like, hey, defense actually pretty good. And then you lost guys. You lost Nick Bosa. You lost Fred Warner. You lost Michael Williams, another rookie. All right. So now it's like, all right, how good are you going to be in that offense? You really have to carry the load. Now, then you lose your quarterback. You're losing receivers left and right. And Brandon Ayuk never shows back up. So the 49ers now are dealing with having a decimated roster and still trying to figure out how to win games. Well, Mac Jones did a terrific job keeping the 49ers afloat, winning 5 out of 8 games, kind of carrying things while Purdy was able to recover. Then you got, a couple other guys back and starting to get guys healthy, and George Kittle and, Juwan Jennings, a lot of guys who are missing time. And the 49ers figured out how to win games. Now, some of the wins, very impressive, right? Beating the Los Angeles Rams early on. But I think we all knew that if there was a season where maybe we were going to have some injuries and still be able to win games, or just be able to win games regardless, it was this year because the schedule wasn't strong. I think most people would say, oh, yeah, but you never know how the season's going to play out. Right? Yeah. There's going to be teams that end up being good that you're not expecting, and there's going to be teams that are bad that you're not expecting to be bad. But the one thing I realized was, even though that may be the case, it still kind of ends up evening out, even if it's not the teams you're expecting. So like the Chicago Bears, we were not expecting the Chicago Bears to be good. Next, they were good. And then there's going to be some teams that are bad that you aren't expecting to be bad. So it kind of still even out to where it ended up being a little bit more of a favorable schedule for the 49ers, especially at key points when they weren't very healthy. They weren't playing the strongest competition. So that really, even the Colts, I think they played the Colts at a time where they had just lost Daniel Jones.
Mm-hmm.
It was like when Daniel Jones was there, they were really good. They lost him. Okay, that really helped. Even though Phillip Rivers was lighting the 49ers up a little bit. But that even came to a halt, especially with the pick 6 by D. Winters. So there were some things that really helped the 49ers still be able to win a lot of games. So I think that the schedule, it ends up evening out a little bit. And being more true to the preseason projections.
You know, what's interesting is the 49ers actually ended up having the 22nd easiest schedule last year after all was said and done, because there was a lot of teams like the Colts were, the best team in the league for half the year, and then all of a sudden became the worst team in the league for the second half of the year. There was such a wild team there, but they had a very easy schedule as well when they were playing awesome. So I don't think it was all just because of Daniel Jones either with the Colts. And I remember talking about that around mid-season. It was like, man, the Colts schedule has been really easy. It starts to get very difficult. We'll see if that continues. Then Daniel Jones gets hurt, and then things got very difficult for those Indianapolis Colts down the stretch. But there was a bunch of teams that we weren't sure about going into the year, right? And the Jaguars were a lot better. The Chicago Bears were a lot better. And so I wonder what those teams might be on the schedule this year for the San Francisco 49ers. We don't know exactly who and when the 49ers are going to be playing everybody, but we do know who the opponents are going to be, and we know the season's going to start against the Rams in Australia. But home games, obviously, they're going to have one against each team in the division: Cards, Rams, Seahawks. They will be playing at home against the Denver Broncos. The Niners are playing the AFC West this year, so they're going to be hosting the Denver Broncos and Las Vegas Raiders. They're going to be hosting the Philadelphia Eagles, Washington Commanders, Miami Dolphins, and Minnesota Vikings. And then on the road, the 49ers will obviously go to the Cards, Rams, and Seahawks. And obviously, there's some international games, and we'll find out exactly what that international game is going to be in Mexico City. And I believe the 49ers have requested that it won't be the Broncos or the Raiders, because they want to have that Raider gate coming to Levi's Stadium, and they don't want the Broncos to have the advantage of the thin, high-altitude air that they're used to playing in Denver, which is also high altitude in Mexico City. And so Cards, Rams, Seahawks are the away games. But the Dallas Cowboys, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Los Angeles Chargers, New York Giants, and Atlanta Falcons are on the schedule. And you start looking at teams like the Giants. Could they take a big leap forward with a second-year quarterback and a new head coach? Los Angeles Chargers, I think, could be a lot better team with just a healthy offensive line and a new offensive coordinator the 49ers are very familiar with. The Atlanta Falcons, new offensive head coach, but they're going to keep the same defense. What's that going to look like? And is Michael Penix going to take a leap this year for them? Dallas Cowboys addressed a ton of their defense in the draft. Are they going to be a much better football team? And so the away schedule could be somewhat difficult for the 49ers. Kansas City Chiefs obviously could be always a Super Bowl contender with who they have at quarterback and kind of retooling after a really, really bad year. And then the Raiders, I wouldn't expect the Raiders or the Dolphins to be good, but you could paint a picture that anybody else that's on the schedule could be pretty darn good against the 49ers. So 8th strength of schedule, I don't know if it adds up when I start looking at the teams. I think this could end up being a pretty difficult schedule, especially if the Washington Commanders bounce back. The Eagles, the Broncos had the best defense in the NFL, or one of last year. And so Minnesota Vikings, Dolphins, and Raiders look like the easiest home games, in the Arizona Cardinals. But that doesn't seem like a cakewalk of a schedule. It looked easier, I think, last year for sure going into the year, and then some of those games ended up being more difficult than we thought.
Does the thought of Kyler Murray worry you at all being in Minnesota?
No. The worry in Minnesota is that that Kyler Murray and that competition makes J.J. McCarthy play better, and J.J. McCarthy becomes the guy they hoped he was going to be. And I think the fact that they brought in Kyler Murray tells us that they're not too sure about J.J. McCarthy right now. But yeah, that's one that doesn't worry me. The 49ers are used to playing against Kyler Murray. I think he's got probably a better offensive coordinator, but he's had some good weapons in the past in Arizona, and it hasn't helped him. So I'm not super worried about that one really at all.
I think J.J. McCarthy kind of got set up. You can't go from Sam Darnold getting 14 wins and then all of a sudden, and getting hurt.
Yeah.
And then now I have to follow that up with no experience, or little to no experience. He didn't have much experience throwing the ball at Michigan.
Mm-mm.
So, and now I got to follow up what Sam Darnold just did, winning 14 games. Now, nothing I do is going to look good, because everybody's going to think about what it looked like, not only the year before with Sam Darnold, but what Sam Darnold looked like in Seattle going to a Super Bowl and winning. That's the guy we let go for this guy who's still young and very limited in the amount of snaps and throws that he's had going back to probably high school. That's tough.
That is tough. And the other part of this is, man, you look at, I think Matt Williamson and I on the NFL Six Pack podcast, make sure you're all subscribed up there. We're going through team by team and talking about our favorite draft picks from the division and going through all the picks that every team made. And we just finished the NFC West and the NFC conference today. Next week, we'll be doing the AFC. And man, the West had by far the worst draft of all the divisions. I think some of the worst drafts in the entire division were in the NFC West. I think the NFC East had awesome drafts and those teams got a lot better. The Bears, I thought, had a great draft. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I thought, had a great draft. And so I think there's a lot of teams that got better. And even though the 49ers and then in the Seahawks and the Rams were three of the better teams in the NFC and still should be going into this year, I think that gap is closing a little bit. The Niners or the West was by far the best division in the entire NFL. There was two NFC West teams that basically were playing the Super Bowl in the NFC Championship game last year. But I don't think they did much to help themselves this year. We'll see how it turns out. And a lot of other teams got a lot better. So this is going to be a fascinating year, and I think the NFC could be a powerhouse, Croc.
It definitely can. I think that's the case dang near, every year. Yeah. I think the NFC does a really good job with how they build it. I think at times the AFC has had stronger quarterback play. The NFC definitely, especially the top 7 teams, pretty competitive.
Speaking of the 49ers draft, the Seattle Seahawks did a very interesting thing in the first round of the draft, and they have a new offensive coordinator who came from San Francisco who thought that the 49ers were going to take their guy if they were to trade down from pick 32. So let's talk about running back. Jadarian Price, could he have been a San Francisco 49er? And do the 49ers see the end of the tunnel as it pertains to Christian McCaffrey's career with the San Francisco 49ers? And they're prepping for that next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by BetterHelp Online Therapy. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and it's an important reminder to that whenever you are, like, whatever it is, a lot of people are carrying a lot in this world right now, and whatever it is that you are carrying, you don't have to go through it alone. Life can feel overwhelming sometimes, whether it's stress, uncertainty, anxiety, or just trying to manage everything that's on your plate. And it's easy to feel like you need to figure it all out by yourself. And therapy can be a place to get support, gain perspective, and talk things through with someone who's there to listen and help. BetterHelp connects people with licensed therapists and makes it easier to get matched with someone who fits your needs and goals. Mental Health Awareness Month is a good time to check in with yourself and really ask how you're doing. And if your first match isn't the right fit after you get matched with a licensed therapist, you can switch therapists at any time. Having someone with you, someone to listen and support you, can make a real difference. You don't have to be on this journey alone. Find support and have someone with you in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Did you hear this story, Croc? I've seen a couple reports here that the Seattle Seahawks, including new offensive coordinator Brian Fleury, who was hired from the San Francisco 49ers staff, former tight ends coach for the 49ers, now going to be the play caller and offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. He thought, and the Seattle Seahawks thought, that the San Francisco 49ers, who traded out of round 1 and had the 33rd pick in the NFL draft after all, and ended up drafting Dejon Stribling, the Seattle Seahawks thought if they traded down, and they were trying to trade down, they thought that Jadarian Price was going to be their guy at 33, and the Niners would have made that selection. What do you think about Jadarian Price? 49ers running back, potentially. If the Niners would have turned in the running back card at 33, I think it would have been a more insane reaction than we even saw with the shocking pick of Stribling that nobody saw coming, and then the 3rd round running back in Kalen Black.
I think it would have made I actually think it would have made more sense to draft Price at 33 as opposed to Black at pick 90 or whatever it was, because now you're saying, which we really like Price, right? Like, Price to me was like, hey, this is an every down back. He runs extremely well. I liked everything about his film. This is a featured back, right? Like, this is a guy. So now you're telling me
clearly a better prospect, right? Clearly a better prospect than Kalen Black. In my
opinion. Now, 49ers, I don't know, because they're talking about they had this guy number 2, and I don't know if it was
so that
number
means
2.
either he was ahead of either Love or Jadarian Price, right?
Which
So maybe they didn't like Price at all, or they loved Price and would have taken him at 33 and didn't like Jeremiah Love.
Which anyone who watched a Notre Dame game, if you watched it and you came away with the same, not that big of a fan of Love, I'd be like, you're you're tripping, because that dude was awesome. Now, I'm not a big fan of drafting running backs super high, but he is really good. He is really good. But no running back is good enough typically to change the outcome of a season for the most part for a team. And that was your whole argument when it came to the Christian McCaffrey trade. All right, but that's a whole nother story. Either way, 49ers, what were they thinking? And it would have told me, hey, we see some limitations in Christian McCaffrey, and we're going to try to, I don't want to say phase him out, but maybe limit his role a little bit and go more to a true 2-back system if they draft this guy high, right? So it would be telling me more about Christian McCaffrey than anything else. You draft a guy at 90. I don't know, a guy that wasn't really the starter at Indiana is like, I don't know if you're drafting him to be the guy. And maybe that is how they view Black, and maybe that's the thing that we're missing. But it definitely would have made a lot more sense if it were Price. Excuse me, Price. And I think anybody who watched the episode of us talking about Price saw that these are guys who really like the way this guy runs the ball.
Yeah, Price was a good prospect. I wouldn't have taken him at 33 or 32, and I wouldn't have taken.
I would not have either.
90 either. But how about this? Would you have rather had the combination of Jadarian Price and Chris Bell at 90, or Dejon Stribling and Kalen Black at 33 and 90 combined? Because when you put it that way, I think Price Bell at least has a higher upside combined, because I think Bell minus the ACL is at least on par prospect wise as Dejon Stribling, and I'm pretty sure you would have liked him more minus the ACL injury than Dejon Stribling straight up. So both players you would have liked straight up in that scenario.
Yeah, it is tough when you throw in, is like, okay, I drafted a running back high, right? And on top of that, I'm taking a guy with an ACL. I would have had a hard time with that
thing, but it might be better.
I almost would have liked, now again, just for my brain, I almost would have liked you to draft Bell at 33, because now you're telling me he's going to be back soon and he's going to be ready to go, and then draft a Price at 90, right? Which you can get him there, but that would have kind of worked a little bit more for my psyche. But I think anytime you take a running back high, it is just tough to wrap my brain around, unless you're telling me he's 100% going to be a guy. He's an every down back. He's got, when the Seahawks drafted running back out of Michigan State that they just let go.
Kenneth Walker, second round.
Yeah, Kenneth Walker, second round. It was like, or the New York Jets drafting Breece Hall.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, like I really like his game at Iowa State. But guys, drafting running backs high, and they're not the every down guy, that is tough.
Yeah.
Breece was, I felt like early on his usage was right, but then he tore his ACL. His usage was really good. Like, he was good.
No, yeah, and that's it. That's the thing, is like hitting on the running back doesn't even help you that much. That's kind of the whole point of the whole thing, is like, it's like you buy a lottery ticket for $5, and if you win, you get $6. It's like, well, what's the point of that? If you want to get $1,000 if you win, right? Like, that's the whole point. Is what's the point of playing the lottery if you just basically get your money back if you win anyway? And that's kind of what it's like when you draft the running backs. Even when you hit, it doesn't really actually help you all that much. And life can be difficult for a running back if you don't have the offensive line built already. And if the line's good, then you don't have to have the best running back, right? And it would have been wild if the 49ers drafted a nearly first round running back after being the team that has spent the most resources on running backs in the entire league, Croc, and still had 3.7 yards per carry last year. You know what I mean? Like, how much evidence do you need that the running back?
So that's the problem I would have had. It's like drafting the running back, but not addressing anything on the line first.
Yeah. And the fact that they were so adamant about running back, that it was such a huge need that they couldn't wait on a mid-tier running back in a bad running back class by Kyle Shanahan's own admission. That's usually not the year you want to dip into a player and draft the new guy of a tier in a bad year for that position. Tells me that maybe they are looking at a realistic end to Christian McCaffrey being 30 years old with the mileage that are on his tires with some of the injuries he's dealt with in his career. I want to talk a little bit about the big play factor for the 49ers and what the plan might be. And is it more Christian McCaffrey related or more depth related? Because it feels a little high to be so adamant about a running back just for depth purposes. We'll get into that next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Rougiette. The NHL playoffs are here. And every shift matters in the NHL. I love the NHL playoffs, man. Playoff hockey is fun. And every moment is intense. And the pressure is at its highest. And just like performance matters on the ice, it matters off the ice too. That's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette offers treatments designed to help you get ready and stay ready when it matters. Their top option, Rougiette Ready, combines clinically proven ingredients in a simple mint that dissolves under your tongue. It works fast, often in about 15 minutes, and can last up to 36 hours. And they also offer Go Long, designed to help with both performance and control. It's all about confidence and feeling like yourself again. Head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnNHL and get 15% off your ED treatment. That's Rougiette, RUGIET.com/LockedOnNHL for 15% off Rougiette Performance Medicine for Men. Do you think the 49ers are just looking at it realistically with Christian McCaffrey, thinking we don't want to pay him that much money for a long time, and he just had 450 carries last year, touches last year, and he's so likely to break down that we have to find him either a running mate or just figure out how we're going to replace him? And because like you could have signed a free agent running back, you could have waited, but they couldn't wait. Maybe they were going to draft the guy at 33, and they for sure weren't going to wait after pick 90, and they couldn't even wait a dozen picks, as Kyle Shanahan talked about, until the fourth round began to get this running back that everybody else in the world thought would have been there a round or two later.
Here's what I think they're telling us.
Okay.
I think they are maybe telling us something about Christian McCaffrey, because we all blame, and I'm adding me in it,
Yeah.
and I also hear the fan base. We blame the offensive line, and PFF says no. The 49ers had the fifth best offensive line in the league, regardless of Christian McCaffrey having one of the worst averages for most of the season than he's ever had. Like, he struggled to have a consistent run game, and then there were some hits later in the year, but that was not consistent throughout the year. It was more consistent that we saw CMC hovering around 3 yards per carry. And we all blame the O-line. And the 49ers, when they had a chance to address the O-line, they did not. So PFF says, nope, you guys weren't as bad as you think. You're the defensive line in the league. Kyle Shanahan and company says, nope, we're not taking a lineman at 33 because we clearly don't think they are that big of an issue. So what is the issue, especially when we take a running back at pick 90? Maybe the issue is Christian McCaffrey, and nobody wants to say that out loud. Am I tripping? I don't want to be that, because I know the fan. Am I tripping? Or I'm using context clues. Shout out to Miss Reed. She taught us that in 7th grade. I'm using context clues, and the context clues are saying, hey, Croc, you've been reading this all wrong. Kyle is saying Christian McCaffrey, there may be something there.
Yeah. I think it would be really – a lot of talk has been about Kalen Black's receiving ability and passing down ability. It would be strange if the 49ers were to watch Christian McCaffrey and think, oh, what we need is to have somebody else on the field on third downs, and Christian McCaffrey is going to be the runner. Because it should be the exact opposite. Christian McCaffrey is the best receiving running back that we've seen, maybe ever. Super. If there's any time he should be on the field, it's every third down, every automatic passing down. Christian McCaffrey should be on the field. Somebody else should be taking the other carries, in my opinion. So that's one side of it, if he is to have a running mate. The other part of it is probably they're thinking about when he's just not on the field at all, which would be either injury or the backup running backs are carrying or, get an entire series to run, and then Kyle Shanahan can run his full playbook. So that's probably more of the idea. So they're planning for him to not be in the lineup, because when he's in the lineup, he has to be on the field on passing down. Right?
So you're saying that the I'm reading it wrong with the O-line thing. Like they are saying that, or you're saying no, they're not
Clearly saying that they're not worried about the offensive line because they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Right. And they
so again, if they're saying that there's nothing wrong with the O-line, but this guy was averaging 3 yards a carry for most of the season, then what are you telling me?
Yeah. Well, look, how about this? Not only just the average, and I think a big part of the average was the lack of big plays. The 49ers were 10th, or no, excuse me, they were 20th in the NFL in 10-plus yard rushes. They had 46 running plays of 10-plus yards last year, which was 20th in the league. They had only 4 rushes of 20-plus yards last year, Croc, which was 31st in the league. Only one team worse than the 49ers in 20-plus yard running plays. And
that's good. Like, I want to say what, like week 14? I mean, for a long time, it was like 16 yards was the longest carry of the season for Christian McCaffrey.
It was like 12 yards for a long time, I think. And then he had that.
What did everybody say? Oh, they're not blocking. They're not blocking up front. Like, that was the whole thing.
Here's the other part of explosives. And by the way, 50-plus yards runs, they had 0. They only had one 50-yard play, I think, all year long, which was tied for last in the NFL. They were tied for last with 0 runs that were 50-plus yards. So explosive plays were a big problem for the 49ers on the ground and through the air, but at least they had some 10-plus yard plays. I think they were 4th in the NFL. Let me double check for passing plays that were, do I have that? I have passing plays that were 20-plus yards. The Niners were 13th, and overall 10-plus yard plays, they were 4th in the NFL. So they could get 10 yards, but they couldn't get more than 10 yards, essentially, as a football team last year. The other part of big plays as the running back was who's blocking for you down the field, right? What did they do? They drafted the best blocking wide receiver in the draft and then signed the biggest wide receiver in the entire NFL in Mike Evans. And so what they're telling us is they need better downfield weapons, better blocking wide receivers. They don't need help on the offensive line, and they do need more help at running back. That's that. Whatever they're saying to us, I don't know, but that's what they're telling us through their actions, right?
Hey, listen, and fan base, I'm not the one that's saying that Christian McCaffrey is washed or can't run still. It's the 49ers saying that. That is not my opinion. Want to make that very clear. Croc, you said you do not like Christian McCaffrey. Nope. I didn't say that. I'm telling you, that's what the 49ers are saying by not addressing the offensive line for a running back who was averaging 3 yards a carry for most of the season.
Mm-hmm. So the 49ers and PFF.
And then drafting another running back to say we want him to start sharing the load with Christian McCaffrey.
How many people would have thought the Niners drafted a running back before any offensive lineman in this year's class? None.
You could have paid me a lot of money, and I would have thought that would be.
There was a lot of people that would have said it jokingly.
Like that they drafted running back.
Punter, right? They're joking. Hey, watch out for that 3rd round running back. Watch out for that 3rd round kicker. Watch out for that 3rd round punter. And then lo and behold, it actually happened, right? But they weren't serious when they were saying that. And that's how cartoonish this draft was in some ways for the 49ers based on what we thought was going to happen. Is this the end for Christian McCaffrey? I don't know. This is usually when the end begins or has already begun a while ago for NFL running backs. Who was the other? Who were the running backs in Christian McCaffrey's draft class?
Leonard Fournette for sure.
It feels like he retired 9 years ago, right?
Let me see. I feel like it wasn't like a long. I mean, his production diminished. Quickly.
Zeke Elliott was the year before. He's been done for a while. At least 3 years.
All right, let's see. Leonard Fournette. I'm pulling up his stats. So, he's been done officially for 2 seasons, 2024, 2025. Okay. But in 2023, he played in 2 games and had 12 carries for 40 yards. So, pretty much like 3 years. And Christian McCaffrey, very productive, right? I mean, hugely very productive. Yeah. I did see your tweet the other day, because I think the amount of yards that he accumulated and production that he had, you think people kind of leave out the volume of touches he had.
Yeah. And
it wasn't the most efficient. Like you talked about Brandon Ayuk the other day. And I was like, hey, Brandon Ayuk, super efficient with his touches, like 75 catches, 1,400 yards. He's averaging 21 yards per. It's like ridiculous, right?
Right.
CMC maybe not as efficient with his touch, efficient with the targets and catching, but it's like, okay, 5 yards, 4 yards, 3-yard carry, not a lot of explosive runs. So it's kind of force fed as opposed to somebody who's just going so crazy that you have to give him the ball. And the 49ers needed that, by the way. They needed him getting touches. They needed him creating.
They needed him getting first down more than anything. Like they literally, the stats say they literally could have turned around and handed the ball to anybody, and it would have been the same results, or maybe even better. Who knows? It was better last year with Jordan Mason and the same offensive line, or the year before with Jordan Mason, yards per carry wise. But what the value that Christian McCaffrey brought was as a receiver, especially with the decimated receiving core, being able to get first downs and throw him the football out of the backfield. That was clearly the value of Christian McCaffrey. But the end is near. That's what history tells us. The running backs from his own class have been washed for a while. Yeah.
Look at the two.
Like
what was it, 2017?
Derrick Henry was 2016 as well, the year before, and he's still going in his 30s, playing well. 2017 draft was Christian McCaffrey. That was the first year. That was the Solomon Thomas draft.
So there was Alvin Kamara. He's still going.
He's still going, but he's in the washed era of his career.
Joe Mixon.
Washed.
Those are the big names. Let's see. Tariq Cohen, Jamal Williams, Marlon Mack, Chris Carson, Austin Eckler.
Still going, but like getting phased out of Washington. In fact, last year was kind of his phase out year.
There's some more here. Ooh, here's a good one. Joe Williams, 49ers. Jeremy McNichols, who still kind of hangs around.
Joe Williams.
It was Jeremy, but Jeremy McNichols, he kind of hangs around a little bit on the low. Like I'll randomly be watching the game and they'll be like, Jeremy McNichols with the carry. And I'm like, wow, he is. I mean, that was. Let me look at his
49ers legend, Jeremy McNichols, by the way.
Yeah, see, last year he had 44 carries for 221 yards. Like he randomly still plays.
5 yards per carry last year. That was his best season in the NFL.
5 yards per carry. In the year before that, 4.7 yards per carry. Now he ain't getting the touches CMC's getting, but 5 yards a carry, 25 catches. He's randomly sneaky.
McNichols is the one McNichols is the one that was on Hard Knocks in 2017, right? His rookie year. And then
correct, got cut and then signed with the Niners practice squad. He was on the Niners team. And after that, so 2017, 49ers, then the Colts, then the Jags, then the Titans again, 49ers again in 2023, then the last 2 years, the Commanders. So not a whole lot of production. I mean, I don't even think this totals up to 1,000 total yards, but he is still playing.
Trey Sermon appeared in 4 games last year, no carries for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So those must have been, I don't know if they were special teams snaps or just he had a uniform on, didn't see the football field. And Ty Davis Price did not play last year. He was with the Eagles the year before.
I saw him in the UFL.
Okay.
Yeah.
What a weird draft pick that
He's still playing football.
What a weird pick that was, man. Like just
out
of nowhere, completely overdrafted, didn't fit the scheme. That's one where you point to like the process. You got to fix whatever that process was. And I'm not sure the 49ers have the Joe Williams process. Like those types of things you can't have. What are you doing drafting a third-round running back that doesn't play at all?
Let's see. I have an audio from that draft, from that pick. It's 36 seconds. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah, I'm interested. What is this?
All right, here we go. Hold on. Share screen. All right, here we go.
Yes.
49ers have two starting safety right now. So I thought they put more safety right there. You had Nick Klaus still on the board. 49ers have two starting safety right now. So I thought they would do something to really help that. They go third round, draft running back. You just drafted a running back third round last year with Trey Sermon. And he didn't see the field. And the guy that you got in the 6th round, he was the guy that almost ran for 1,000 yards. And they consistently have had the guys that are either undrafted or really late round picks be the most productive guys, but they still go and draft a running back 3rd round. I don't get that.
Welcome to the Seattle party.
Yeah, Nick. All right.
Yeah. Forgot about the live, the one and only live television program we produced here at Locked On. That was awesome. Seeing Croc in Dallas, right at the studios. I forget. It was the home studio built by the guy that did sports science on ESPN, right? Isn't that the studio we used for that, or was it the different TV station?
It was a TV station.
The TV station. Okay, we used that other studio for another thing that we did as a network.
I believe it was a Tegna station, but it was awesome, and it was actually, it was an awesome experience. A lot of research went into that because you had to know these prospects and you had to be able to talk about them when they were taken and have a take on all these guys. And we did all 7 rounds. So next I got to give my,
by the way,
post that video of Danny Gray.
You mentioned Nick Cross too, which was one of my guys in that class. And so I was during a live episode, someone asked us recently about some draft misses we had, and I was all the way on board with Drake Jackson that year, 2nd round, taking that swing on a super athletic edge rusher. And look, even if you miss on that type of player, it's a better pick than, you say, a 3rd round kicker or a running back that's going to be a backup even at best, right? You take a swing on a pass rusher. Didn't work out with Drake Jackson. I don't feel super bad about that miss, even though I was all on board with that pick for the San Francisco 49ers. But after that, Croc, in the 3rd round, because that was the final pick of the 2nd round, or the second to last pick of the 2nd round. In the 3rd round, do you know who the guys were that would have been my shadow draft, even though it was retired at that point? It was Nick Cross, Calvin Austin, instead of Ty
Davis Price and Danny Gray.
Yeah, and then even better, 4th round, Zach Tom, who's starting offensive tackle for the Green Bay Packers right now. Like, wow. what a haul that would have been.
Well, here's Nick Cross is still playing.
Yeah, he just got paid by Washington.
Yep, 5 career interceptions, playing for Washington, and let's see his starts. That's a big one. What are his starts in the NFL? How many games is he starting? And I'm glad I mentioned that live. Yeah. Last 2 years, he has started every single game. 17 games in 2024, 17 games in 2025.
Yeah.
And he got signed to be a guy. So hey, y'all heard it. Y'all heard me mention him. And so when people talk about how difficult, you think you know more, might know a little bit more.
Yeah.
Just a little.
Especially when the thing that the team does is so obviously a bad move at the time. And we just went through the 2023 draft, and it doesn't take a genius to be like, well, that was stupid, drafting a 3rd round kicker, right? And you talk yourself into it, which the 49ers clearly did, and some fans did, but we weren't having it, Croc. He was like, no, man, that's not a good move. Not how teams find
Dante Whitner kind of recant his original statements on Strickland?
No. I know
somebody
said he didn't like him right away, but I think he was box score scouting. As I saw a little clip of him, and he wasn't really talking about the tape. He was just talking about 5 years, not enough. He disappears for too many games and stretches and some things like that.
He was going over the box scores, and now he has gotten a chance to watch the film, and he said that Kyle Shanahan has had a lot of receivers who are one-trick ponies. He mentioned Julio Jones, who is just a vertical threat. He mentioned Brandon Ayuk, who is just a vertical threat. He mentioned Deebo Samuel, who is just a yards after catch guy. But Stribling is the first guy that Kyle Shanahan has coached who can win and threaten you at every single level. That was his words.
I don't necessarily agree with all of that.
We say Julio Jones a one-trick pony. What we
talking? Well, yeah, that's a big one. Brandon Ayuk was a big one. Loose as hell as a route runner, can win at every level. Yeah. Deebo, yes, was a one-trick after catch guy.
He had to get the ball a certain way, and that was how you were going to get production.
That was correct. The other two I totally disagree with. And then I do see the point that that Stribling, maybe he won't be a dynamic route runner in the NFL, but he can help you out in the run game with his blocking ability. But he can catch and run and do some after the catch stuff. He can run crossers. He can run away from guys, and he can threaten deep because of his speed. So at least 2 levels of it.
I think that's a better way to put it when you just talk about the things that he can do.
Yeah.
Because if you ask me, what can he do? I would tell you he can block his ass off. Like, he does block his ass off.
Yeah.
He can win on slants. He can win on digs. He can win vertically. The other part to that equation is that what does he do consistently? And that's the
question.
Part where you start to talk about where you're drafting a guy. But he can do all those things. So if you can just get him to be consistent, then you did strike gold. Yeah. No pun intended.
I didn't expect Whitner to come in with the disrespectful Julio take, though.
Oh,
and Ayuk take, really.
The Ayuk one, I mean, we're kind of, the way they're talking about Ayuk right now.
Yeah.
But Julio? And Julio, it's like, you guys go watch some Julio games.
Julio's freaky.
I got a monster wherever. I mean, he's just, that was, But Stribling, I said it. Hey, I can see what I say on Twitter. I can see why the 49ers like him. That's not me saying I'm very high on him, but the things that if you're saying, hey, we want a guy that blocks his butt off, can win vertically, can win inside, can win on digs, and has some catch and run ability, I would say, okay, I can see those things. Let's go. Let's get it.
I think the big thing we learned in this episode, Croc, is that at Coach Crocky on Twitter thinks that the 49ers didn't draft a running back high enough and should have taken Jadarian Price at 33.
I think it would have made it more clear how they feel about Christian McCaffrey.
That's very true. Thanks, everybody.
Not how I feel. Hold on. Not how I feel.
Okay.
How they feel.
Yeah, how they feel. How they feel. That's right. Thanks for tuning in. How do you read the running back room? At BD Peacock, at Coach Crocky. Drop a comment or a topic idea in the YouTube comments. Of course, subscribe while you are there. And Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.